Well, good morning, guys. I hope that everybody's doing well today. Before we really get going on the video, I do want to let all of you know how grateful that I have been for the response that I have received from so many in regards to these videos. And I hope and pray that they continue to be helpful for you. Well, this morning, our topic today, or what we're going to be focusing on, is that of discouragement, and specifically how you parents can help your children deal with the discouragement that has come about through the circumstances surrounding the coronavirus. But I bet that all of these truths will be helpful to anyone of any age. Because let's be honest, it's not just our children who have been discouraged. It's been a lot of us, if not all of us, that have found discouragement in some form or fashion. And look, guys, this is a struggle for everyone. Personally, for me and Hillary, our kids are really worried about the upcoming baseball season. If we don't end up getting to have one, which, look, I am the commissioner for the county league. And so I do want to pause and just take a second to let you know that we will do everything feasibly possible to have a season. So don't take this as me saying that we're not. We're going to do everything we can, though I can make no promises to you, nor can I make any promises to my children about what the future holds. And so if we end up not having one, which our children are a little worried about that, I will have an 11-year-old and a soon-to-be 5-year-old boy who will be crushed over not having a season, and an 8-year-old girl that may not be crushed, but she's at least going to be sad. And even more, Samuel turns 5 next week in just 6 days. Next Thursday, he turns 5. And he has literally been planning his 5th birthday party and what he's going to do and who he's going to invite, every single detail of it. He's been planning it since his 4th birthday. So this has been going on for a whole year. And I don't think that it's hit him yet that he's probably not going to be able to have one. And I know when it does, I'm going to have a really sad and really discouraged 5-year-old boy. And I know for many of you that y'all are dealing with the same things. For others, you have children who are seniors this year, who are missing out on the last part of their senior year. They're missing out on prom. A good chance they may miss out on graduation. They've missed out on basketball tournaments, baseball seasons, softball seasons, tennis seasons, and you name it. They have missed out on things over and over. Look, this coronavirus has caused us to miss a lot, and there's a lot to be disappointed over for our children and for us personally. And so for you parents who are in that position that I'm in, helping your children deal with discouragement, I want to share with you 5 things that can help. Though again, maybe you don't have children, or maybe you're a parent and you have your own discouragement, guarantee you that these will help with yourself. The first thing that we need to do is we need to teach our children that disappointment is okay. It's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to have grief. Jesus himself in 1 Thessalonians 4, he said, when you grieve, grieve not as those who have no hope. And so grieving in and of itself is not wrong. All right. The easiest verse in all the Bible to memorize is from the book of John. I believe it's chapter 11, verse 30 something. I don't know. But John chapter 11, somewhere in the 30s. It's this: Jesus wept. All right. Jesus was sad. Jesus was discouraged. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to be disappointed. Emotions are not bad, okay? But what we've got to do is we can't let emotions define and dictate us. Emotions are not bad as long as they don't define and dictate us. But here's the problem. For many parents today, you have lived trying to shield your child from painful emotions. You've done everything you can to make your child happy. And there's good intentions in that. But the fact is, we need to teach our children how to deal with painful emotions. And for many, we've spent our children's childhood shielding and guarding them. And this is not good. We need to teach them how to deal with those emotions. We need to teach them how to take those painful emotions to God and to think properly. All right. And to be honest, the Bible does this with us. The Bible does not shield us from the real world. In fact, John 16:33, a verse that many of you know, Jesus tells us, in this world, there will be trouble, but take heart, for I have overcome the trouble. Jesus prepared his disciples. In those middle chapters of John, Jesus was preparing his disciples for trouble. All right, he wanted them to know that it was coming, but he wanted them to be ready. And we as parents need to make sure we do this. Let's look at some other scriptures. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 12. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 12. Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. And so Jesus says, in this world, there's going to be trouble. Paul says, don't think it's strange when trials come upon you. Yet, what is our response? Seriously, God? Are you kidding me? How could this happen? This isn't supposed to be happening to me. I've even heard some people go so far as to say, it's not God's will for me to suffer. Don't be surprised. Don't think it's strange. All right? Even more than that, staying here in 1 Peter. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 12. Keep your conduct among the Gentiles honorable, so that when, notice it's not if, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation. Peter is writing, expecting these things to happen. Again, 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15 and 16. But in your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect, having a good conscience, so that when, again, not if, but when, so that when you are slandered, those who revile your good behavior in Christ may be put to shame. Peter's writing from the understanding that difficulties will happen, trials will happen, persecution will happen. These things will come. Don't think it's strange. Look, guys, we live in a broken world that's hard. That's why we don't need to shield our children from discouragement and disappointment and pain and hardship, okay? We need to help them understand. We need to help them learn. Even at a young age, 4 and 5, even younger than that, they deal with trials. The trials they deal with at that age may pale in comparison to the ones they'll deal with when they get older. But it doesn't change the fact that for a 3, 4, and 5-year-old, or an 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, or 18-year-old, it may be small, but to them, it's huge. It's monumental. And we need to help them understand this. Even Jesus, who was perfect, went through trials to the point that the very ones he came to save were the ones who killed him, okay? Paul himself was beheaded. Read 2 Corinthians chapter 11 at the suffering that he went through. The 12 disciples, 11 of the 12 were murdered. The only one who wasn't was John, who was exiled onto the island of Patmos to live in exile for the rest of his life. I love to read Christian biographies. We look at great men of the faith, J.C. Ryle, Charles Spurgeon, Hudson Taylor, George Mueller. All these guys suffered. It may not have been persecution, but it was suffering and trials. It's a part of life. No matter how faithful you are, you can't escape it, okay? So teach your child that it's okay to be disappointed, though we must not be driven to despair, all right? So you might say, how do I teach them how not to be driven to despair? This brings us to point number 2, all right? Point number 2 is this. Teach them to look for the blessings that are coming out of this. Teach them to look at the blessings that are coming out of this. Don't just focus on what you're missing, but focus on good, all right? God promises to use all things for good. That's Romans 8:28. So what are some of those things, okay? Teach them to look for this. For instance, when I do marriage counseling, one of the things that I do to try to help people to get their mind in the right place. For one thing, before I get there, I want to show you why I do this. In Philippians chapter 4, which I've mentioned this to you in videos before. Philippians chapter 4, about having peace, he says, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. For people who are having marriage trouble, inevitably they are not thinking about what is honorable in their spouses, what is pure, what is lovely, what is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise. They're not thinking about those things. They're thinking about the things that drive them crazy about their spouses. So what I do is I have them make a list of things that are praiseworthy and excellent about their spouses, all right? Because verse 9 says, what you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. So how can we have the peace of God? Not by setting our minds on the difficulties of life, but on the praiseworthy things, all right? And so I have them to make a list of things about their spouse that they can be thankful for. Secondly, I have them make a list, typically of like 20 things, because I want to force them to think, list of reasons for this specific conflict that they can be thankful. This marriage trouble, what are good things that are coming out of it? And then third, this is an ongoing list. Every day you're adding to this. James 1:17 says, every good and perfect thing comes from God. So let's open up our eyes, get our eyes off of the difficult things in life, and focus on all the blessings. So an ongoing list of blessings and good things that you become aware of. We parents can do this with our children, all right? Let's make a list. Let's specifically find things that we can be thankful for, okay? Things that we can praise God for, things that are excellent, all right? And even what are some specific things? What are some good things that have come out of this coronavirus? Look, I've seen a ton. Families are spending more time together than ever before. We're realizing we don't need sports. We don't need all of this other stuff. It's almost as if we've gone back decades in time, yet still with all the technology that we have now. And I think that's a good thing. So let's help our children to get the focus off of the bad circumstances and what are things that we can be thankful? What are ways that God is still blessing us in the midst of this? Third, and this is a big one, teach them to trust God. Teach them to trust God. For me and Hillary, when our children are afraid at night, we give them tools to use instead of just removing that fear from them. Yes, there have been times that I have laid in bed with my children and slept with them. There have been times that they've gotten in bed and slept with me. But those numbers are in the single digits, to be honest. And I like snuggling with my kids. I like it. But to be honest, I don't like them sleeping in bed with me for a number of reasons. But I'd say more than anything, the reason we don't just lay with them or let them lay with us is we want to teach them to deal with fear. We want to teach them to deal with difficulty. We want to give them the tools that they can use, not just in bed at night, but the tools that they can use in all of life, instead of me just coming and removing that fear from them. There's time and a place. There's been times to where I've thought now is necessary, but the vast majority of the time it's not. I need to give them tools to teach them. What would some of those tools be? And again, these are things that can be used now for your children and things that can be used for you. First, teach them to think properly. This goes back to Philippians 4, all right? The God of peace to be with you. You've got to think things that are true. For people who live with anxiety and worry and fear, they're not thinking about things that are true. They're worrying and fearing about the future. And the fact is, none of us know the future. So whatever your thoughts are on the future and your future circumstances are not true, okay? Nobody knows the future other than God. So whatever future you've concocted in your head, which inevitably is probably going to be worse than it really is, because that's our nature, or you Googled or you went to WebMD, all right? That's not going to be true. Okay, so teach them to think properly. So some things, for instance, at night, what we've taught our children is that your room is the same in the dark as it is in the light. We teach them, me and your mother are here with you. All right, me as a father, it is my job to protect you. That is one of my God-given responsibilities. It is my job to protect you, and I will do that with my life, okay? Some other things. Sounds do not necessitate scariness. Just because you hear a sound doesn't mean that it's coming from something scary. So we're trying to teach them to think true things, and we need to do that the same with coronavirus and everything here. We as parents need to make sure of this, and we need to teach our children the same thing. We must not be led by emotionalism and sensationalism, but rather we must be led by facts and truth, okay? God did not create us to be led by our emotions. He gave us our emotions for good, but our emotions are symptoms of us responding to true things. They're not our dictators. They don't drive us. God did not create us to be led by emotions, but by truth. And so when our children have asked us questions, what we've sought to do is we've sought to share facts with them. And I realize that right now it's hard to know what's true and what's not, because you have some experts saying one thing and other so-called experts saying something else. And then you have other ones, all right? What mainstream media and what a lot of you who are scared and fearful fearful of right now, one of the articles that have driven this fear is an article from England saying that by their models, 2.2 million people in the United States are going to die and 500,000 in the United Kingdom are going to die. Yesterday, this guy who wrote this article came out with another article essentially saying, whoops, uh-oh, sorry, it's actually infinitely less than that. Instead of 500,000, it's more around 20,000, and most of those people would have died this year anyways from the diseases and sicknesses they already had. We take that rate here in America, and instead of 2.2 million, it's like 80,000, which is still a lot, but it's drastically different. And so even these so-called experts are coming at this already with their formulated opinions on it. So look, don't listen to models. Don't listen to predictions. Listen to facts. Here are facts, and we've repeated these to our children, all right, as they've gotten fearful of the virus about different things. One child, and again, this is facts. Dr. Rachel Burks of Trump's coronavirus team, she shared this recently. One child, literally one child in all the world under the age of 15 has died, and it was a child who was 14 in China. One child in the entire world. Our children don't have anything to fear, okay? Even those who are 50 and younger, who are healthy and don't have pre-existing conditions, less than 1% in the entire world. That includes the craziness in Italy. Less than 1% have died. Teach your children things. Show them truth. Don't give them models and predictions. Show them truth and facts. And you guys live off of that too, all right? Also, teach them that God is always with them. Teach them that God is always with them. In Psalm chapter, I believe it's 31. I forgot to look up this reference before, but it's not 31, it's 34. Let's see, Psalm 31. There it is, Psalm 31, verse 7. David writes, I will rejoice and be glad in your steadfast love because you have seen my affliction and you know the distress of my soul. All right? Teach your children, God sees, God knows. And for David, that gave him reason to rejoice. God is always with you throughout the Bible. We can find this in numerous places. God says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. I see, I know. That is reason to rejoice. That is reason to trust God. All right? Teach them scriptures that they can cling to. Teach them scriptures that they can cling to. Many of these scriptures I'm about to share you in this next point as well. But this next point is teach them that they can go to God in prayer. Teach them that they can go to God in prayer. Hebrews chapter 4. Hebrews chapter 4, verses 15 and 16 says this, For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then, because God is a high priest who understands and sympathizes with us, as a result of that, let us with confidence draw near to the throne of grace that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Teach your children, God understands, Jesus understands. He lived, he had fears just like you, and therefore he understands what you're going through. Therefore, go to him with confidence in prayer. Listen to some of this throughout the book of Psalms. For one thing, the book of Psalms is a book of prayer. And throughout the book of Psalms, we find people going to God in need. In fact, 51 of the 150 Psalms are what we call Psalms of lament. A lament is a cry to God in a time of need. So 51 of these 150 Psalms are cries to God in times of need. Go to them and look and see what they say. I'm going to read some of them to you. Psalm chapter 28, verses 6 through 7. Blessed be the Lord, for he has heard the voice of my pleas for mercy. The Lord is my strength and my shield. In him my heart trusts, and I am helped. My heart exults, and with my song I give thanks to him. Psalm 34, 3. Psalm 34, actually verse 4, Psalm 34, verse 4. I sought the Lord, and he answered me. And he delivered me from all my fears. What a wonderful verse to teach your children and for you to live by. Verses 17 and 18, when the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears, and he delivers them out of all their trouble. Your children need to know the Lord hears. He sees their trouble and he hears. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted. Your child is disappointed and discouraged. Jesus understands. He is near them, and he saves the crushed in spirit. Psalm 46. Psalm 46, 1 through 4. Psalm 46, 1 through 4. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling, though a virus sweep the earth and everything we love is taken away and canceled. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. Psalm 56, 3 through 4. When I am afraid, this is one of the ones we've taught our children at night. When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. When you're laying in bed and you're scared, you can trust God. In God, whose word I praise, in God I trust. I shall not be afraid. What can flesh do to me? Then verses 9 through 11, this I know, that God is for me. In God, whose word I praise, in the Lord, whose word I praise, in God I trust. I shall not be afraid. What can man do to me? Psalm 61, 1 through 3. Hear my cry, O God. Listen to my prayer. From the end of the earth I call to you when my heart is faint. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I, for you have been my refuge, a strong tower against the enemy. Then Psalm 13. All right, again, 51 of the 150 Psalms are Psalms of Lament. Psalm 13 is a really good one to look at because nearly all the Psalms of Lament take the same order. Listen to this prayer, and I'll point it out as I go. They all begin by addressing God. How long, O Lord? And then they bring their complaint to God. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? We've been where David is. God, have you forgotten me? God, do you even hear my prayers? God, do you care about me? So you bring your complaint. And then the biblical authors, the psalmist here, they then tell God what they think God needs to do about it, as if God needs our ideas, okay? So David says, consider and answer me, O Lord, my God. Light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Lest my enemies say I've prevailed over him. Lest my foes rejoice because I'm shaken. Okay, we're good at this. We're good at crying out to God. We're good at complaining to God. We're good at telling God what he needs to do about it. God, you need to do this because I can't go on anymore. But that's where our prayers end. But it's not where the biblical psalmist prayers end. And nearly every one of them take this, all right? They end by stating their trust in God and then stating what their response to that trust is God going to be. Listen to verse 5. But, remember at the beginning of it, he's saying, God, have you forgotten me? But by the end of his prayer, he says, but I have trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. So he restates his trust in God. And then what does that mean for him? Notice that this is written in the future tense. He's not saying I'm rejoicing now, but he says, because I trust you and because I know of your steadfast love, my heart shall. I'm struggling right now, but I know one day I will rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord. Teach our children these things. Now, I realize I'm going long, but there's a lot here, all right? Now, the big question that you have and maybe your children have asked, because I've been asked it, okay? The big question, why doesn't God just stop this? If God is a good God who can be trusted, why doesn't he just stop this? Listen, teach your children that God created a good world. Read Genesis chapter 1. 7 times. God says that it's good. The only time he says it's not good is when Adam was single without a wife. Then he gives him a wife and he says, now it's really good. The time it became not good is when we humans blew it. All right. This coronavirus is in the world because we Christians messed up God's good world. All right. So for one thing, it's our fault. But secondly, trust God. Proverbs 3, 5 through 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. And lean not on your own understandings. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. How often have we said, God, I just don't understand? Here's the thing. You don't have to understand. Lean not on your own understandings. In all your ways, Acknowledge him. Acknowledge what? His goodness, his perfection, his wisdom, his sovereignty and control, his love, his grace, his mercy, the fact that he is ever present with you. Acknowledge all of these things instead of the fact that you don't get it. All right? We acknowledge that his ways are higher than our ways. I said this the other day. I don't want to worship a God that I fully understand. Me and my little pitiful mind, I need a God who's greater than me. And so his ways are higher than my ways. And regularly throughout the Bible, we find this phrase, the righteous shall live by faith, not by sight. Here's what we do. When we claim that we have to understand to trust God, we're saying, God, I'll only trust you if I see that you're working for good. The righteous don't have to see it. The righteous just trust God. And we say, God, I trust you even when I don't see it and when I don't understand it. Help your children get to that point. Okay, help them. Thing number 4 to teach your children is that you need, or thing 4 to help your children understand, is that you need to display to them how to trust God. Don't just teach them to trust God, display to them how to trust God. We can do this by a number of ways. One, by you actually trusting God. Secondly, exemplifying that trust by not complaining. I realize it's discouraging to you too. I realize you don't agree with everything Bashir does, with everything Trump does, with everything whoever does. By you not complaining about the things being canceled, okay? Complaining is a sign that you don't trust God, all right? When we choose to not complain, even when we disagree, we do that because we trust that God is using this for good. If I complain and I'm angry, it means that I don't think God's using this for good. If I believe God's using this for good, then I'm not going to complain about good. But also, you're going to display trusting God to your children by you not living in fear and worry. By you not living in fear and worry because you trust that God has got this under control. If God says, don't worry, I've got this under control, yet you worry anyways, that means you don't trust God's got this under control. So teach your children they can trust God by you trusting God, and then you exemplifying that by not complaining and by you not living in fear and worry. And then fifth thing to do with your children to help them understand, create an atmosphere that is comfortable for them. Create an atmosphere that is peaceful and comfortable. How can we do this? Don't let the news run on full blast all day. Your children don't need to hear it, and to be honest, you don't need to hear it. The news stresses out everybody. It'll stress out anyone, regardless of if there's a coronavirus or not. So don't let the news run all day for your health and your children's health. They don't need to hear it. Let them escape it. Secondly, you and your spouse, don't talk about this in front of your children. Again, they need relief from this. They don't need to hear it all the time. They don't need to hear your views on it and your opinions and your thoughts. All right? Let them live and be children. Third, try as much as possible during this time at home. I realize this is different. Normally they're at school. Try as much as possible to bring structure and order to their lives. Let them go to bed at the same time every night. Wake them up. It doesn't have to be as early as they do during the school year, but don't let them sleep till lunch. Let them wake up around the same time every day, 7, 7:30, 8, whatever it is. Have some means of structure of when they wake up, this is what they know that their day is going to look like. Don't just let them play on the iPads. Don't just let them watch TV all day. But trust God throughout all of this, okay? And find things for them to do. It doesn't have to be educational. It doesn't have to be these super things off Pinterest. Play a game with them. Have them play games. Play outside. Do whatever it can be. But try to bring structure. Try to bring an atmosphere that is comfortable. Children thrive in structure. They struggle in chaos. And so help your children by teaching them to think, so help your children by helping them understand that it's okay to be disappointed. Teach them to look, not at the difficulties of life, but at the good things that are coming out of this. Teach them to trust God. Then you display to them how to trust God, and you create an atmosphere that is comfortable. I realize that this wasn't necessarily a fireside chat. This turned more into a sermon. But it's one that I believe is important. And for those who took the time to listen to get to this point, I hope it's an encouragement to you and that it can be an encouragement to your children. May God bless you. I was going to say look forward to seeing you Sunday, but I guess I look forward to you seeing me Sunday as you watch the live stream. May God bless you.